Welcome back. It's Def Diary 99. It's the end of the year. It's almost Christmas. It's gonna be a good time, but it wouldn't be Christmas without a gift. And this gift is another rework of the way armies work, and more importantly, the complete and total removement of the attachment system, the system that nobody used because it was god awful, micromanagey, and nobody could actually find the stupid thing. Regardless, we're going to be talking about ground combat and army rework, and as you may know, this could be pretty interesting, considering armies are a little bit boring. Let's put it that way. Anyway, let's talk about defensive armies and fortresses. So right now, defensive armies, it's completely useless. It basically stops anybody in their tracks for maybe a couple of weeks, and then you just drop new troops on the planet, they crumble, and you win as soon as you've taken out the planetary fortifications. This is going to change. We're going to be seeing the addition of planetary fortresses and defense armies, which is rather interesting. Basically, capital buildings will be producing defense armies all by itself, depending on its level. So if you, for instance, have a galactic imperial palace, then you'll be able to produce more defensive armies than when it's just, I don't know, a reassembled ship shelter or something along those lines. On top of that, you'll be able to build fortresses on every single tile, and not just one fortress on one planet. No, you can literally turn any planet completely into the equivalent of Cadia. Let's hope that your armies don't break before the planet does. Regardless, what this means is that you can set up a planet as a fortress world in a strategic position. In addition, you can put an FTL inhibitor on that planet, as it's a little bit being moved from the planetary bases into the planet itself, and any fleet that enters orbit will not be able to move away from the planet unless it has taken out the FTL inhibitor by effectively invading it. Basically, you can lock an enemy fleet inside of a system for a very long time, giving you the ability to move your fleets around and intercept them where necessary, which is rather interesting because you could basically put a planet in a strategic location, say in a system that has a certain modifier in it, say shields do not work, and it's a choke node, so you have a planet that becomes a fortress, the enemy fleet is stuck, they will need to take the planet, and it literally becomes impossible because there are so many fortresses down there, hence the Cadia reference. Yeah, armies spawned by fortresses are also impervious to orbital bombardment and will not be able to be killed without ruining the building itself. A little more about this shortly. In addition, special, very strong battle thralls will produce very powerful defensive armies, so if placed on the fortress, and special pops like droids will produce their own variants of robotic defensive armies rather than the normal ones. And as I already said, fortified worlds will have their own FTL inhibitor. Here's a picture. It's not final. The art is all very much placeholder. Right now, I think it's one of the old temple icons that I think are no longer in the game anymore, but we shall see. Oh yeah, and also fortresses generate a very small amount of unity. So yeah, there you go. That's Fortress Worlds. They're coming. It's going to be pretty hype. Really looking forward to that. In addition, defensive armies do no longer affect Unrest, so that is no longer the case. Instead, you'll need to handle that by building certain special buildings or using edicts. So yet another influence sink for us to spend our resources on. Basically, the problem was you could just take a planet, spam a ton of our defensive armies, and then take away the Unrest modifier, and that is no longer the case. So there you go. As part of all these changes, defensive armies now have received a general buff and several new technologies to unlock additional tiers of fortresses and various improvements to defensive armies' combat abilities, which means they will grow stronger alongside of invention of new and more powerful assault armies. On the other hand, then there is the standard assault armies, as we already mentioned. They are going to be changed in such a fact that you will never have to embark them on a ship ever again. Once an invasion is done, they will automatically embark onto their ships and go on their merry way. Yeah, I'm sure those badasses that have just drop squatted right on towards the planet are very happy to get the hell off of those worlds, but we will see. It also means that you can no longer use assault armies as defensive armies. So if you want to have a defense, you're going to need to build those defensive armies. So there you have it. Speaking of how these two interact with each other, there is, for those of you who've played Crusader Kings or Europa Universalis or anything along those lines, they are going to be introducing the concept of combat width, some changes to retreating, and collateral damage. So, just to introduce you into the concept of combat width, let's say a planet has a certain amount of tiles. It basically means I'll have a certain combat width. Let's say the combat width is 9 and you're attacking with 20 armies. This means that you can only use 9 of those armies to attack the defensive forces on that planet, whilst the other guys will have to wait their turn. Basically, it means you can only attack with so many troops at once, effectively meaning that you can no longer grab 100 armies, drop them onto a planet, and crush anything in front of you. It also means that you can be a little bit more efficient with your defensive armies, because if your combat width is 9, all you need is 9 armies to hold the line. Obviously, you want to have some reserves there, but yeah, there is that. Also, if you want to take a planet, you will, without getting the previously stated in another dev diary, war exhaustion, you are going to need to have some very strong units. Just getting slave armies down there is probably not the best way of doing things, so get ready to get those chosen ones down onto the ground. In addition, there is the concept of collateral damage. So collateral damage basically means if a unit has a modifier in place that says collateral damage times a certain amount of percentage. Basically what it means is very similar to Orbital Bombardment, where it can lead to the death of pops, destruction of buildings, and also the destruction of tiles, with certain armies generating more collateral damage than others. So for instance, if you want to go and full purifier mode, you just drop a bunch of xenomorphs onto a planet and they will have a 500%, well, final number spending modifier when it comes to collateral damage, and basically ruin everything on the ground. So they're highly destructive and very cost efficient, but yeah, they will basically destroy everything there, and you'll have to rebuild pretty much everything if you want to take the planets. Also, when it comes to combat mechanics, there's going to be a change in the way morale damage and how the system works. For those of you who don't know, there's morale damage in the game. Basically, a unit has a certain percentage of morale, and if it's 0, the unit will rout, and basically you will win the fight. So what is going to be the change here is you're actually going to need to take a look at what kind of defensive troops are on the ground and counter with the proper types of units. So for instance, if they are nice fleshy meat bags on the ground, then you can use Psi Warriors to generate more morale damage, and they will sadly not be as useful versus droids because they are unfeeling killbots. So there is that. So that is basically there. There's also tweaking the damage dealing algorithms, so the damage is less evenly spread onto combatants. So you will have more damage on singular armies than everything being spread out. Even an outnumbered force can destroy regiments and inflict war exhaustion on the enemy. So basically, defensive armies can focus down single attacking armies and generate more war exhaustion. So that's also a thing there. Also, then it comes to retreats. When you're on the ground as an attacker and you need to retreat, basically right now there is really no penalty from getting off the ground from an attack. What's going to change there is very similarly to fleets, where if you retreat, you have the potential of losing the ships in the fleet. We're going to be seeing a similar system being added to armies as well. So if your attack's not going well and you want to retreat your armies, there is a chance that you may lose some of those armies whilst you are, in fact, retreating. Then there's going to be orbital bombardment changes. So right now in the game, there's 4 types of orbital bombardment. There is limited, normal, heavy, and Armageddon. Armageddon is only available to Fanatical Purifiers and Determined Exterminators, I believe. But that's going to change. So right now, it looks like we're going to be seeing changes to bombardment as follows. We're going to be boiling everything down to 3 bombardment types: Selective, Indiscriminate, and Armageddon. Selective deals normal damage, so kind of like you have right now. cannot kill the last 10 pops on a planet. Indiscriminate does heavy damage to pretty much everything, cannot kill the last 5 pops. And finally, we got Armageddon. Deals massive damage to everything on the ground and can turn planets into depopulated team worlds with enough bombardment. Only available to certain empires such as Purifiers, so most likely Determined Exterminators and Fanatic Purifiers and that sort of thing. So we will see how that is gonna go. Let's take a look here. Orbital Bombardment, in addition, is going to drive up war exhaustion on the receiving end, which makes perfect sense. So there is that as well. Finally, as I already mentioned at the start of the video, attachments, they are completely gone. They are going to go away. They are awful, and I am not actually too keen to see what that is going to be about, what if anybody is going to replace it. But attachments, they were a terrible system, a real leftover from when the game originally launched in 1.0 back in 2016. And yeah, it's good to see it go, because it would just clutter up the interface and added technology options that were not necessary at all. So there you go. Just to recap, we're going to see Cadia. Of course, everybody knows that the planet breaks before the guard does. We're going to see new army modifiers. We're going to see fortresses, assault army management, new combat width, which is a pretty big deal, collateral damage, and orbital bombardment changes, and finally attachments. So that will be the last Death Diary for 2017. The next one is coming out on January 11th, and they haven't told us yet what it's going to be about. I'm expecting the announcement for a new expansion. We shall see. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take good care of yourselves and each other.